Marcus Thompson stood in the parking lot of Elite Fitness in downtown Phoenix, watching through the glass windows as his wife Sarah laughed at something her yoga instructor was saying. At 47, Marcus had spent 15 years as a Marine before transitioning to corporate security consulting. The discipline and observational skills never left him. Sarah had been taking classes with Trevor Walsh for 4 months now. What started as twice-weekly sessions had evolved into daily visits, late-night phone calls about breathing techniques, and a wife who suddenly cared about her appearance in ways she hadn't since their wedding day 12 years ago. Marcus pushed through the studio doors just as Trevor was demonstrating a partner pose with Sarah, his hands lingering on her waist longer than any professional instruction required. The evening class was winding down, other students rolling up their mats and chatting quietly. "Marcus!" Sarah's voice carried a note of surprise that confirmed what he'd suspected. "I didn't expect you here." Trevor turned, and Marcus immediately read the young man's posture. Mid-20s, lean muscle from years of practice, the kind of confident swagger that came from being the center of attention in a room full of admiring students. His man bun and carefully groomed beard spoke to someone who spent considerable time crafting his image. "You must be the husband," Trevor said, not bothering to hide his smirk. "Sarah's told me so much about you." The remaining students sensed tension and began gathering their belongings more quickly. Marcus noticed phones appearing, the modern instinct to document conflict in real time. "Has she?" Marcus replied calmly, settling onto a bench near the wall. He began removing his work shoes, taking his time with each lace. The methodical action was something he'd learned in the Marines. Always maintain control of the tempo. Trevor stepped closer, emboldened by what he interpreted as submission. "She mentioned how you've been distant lately. Working all the time, not paying attention to what she needs." The studio had quieted except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Marcus continued working on his shoes, letting Trevor build his performance for the small audience that remained. "Yoga requires dedication," Trevor continued, positioning himself where the mirrors would catch his profile. "Sarah's been very committed to her practice, very flexible in her approach to learning." A few nervous laughs from the remaining students. Trevor was playing to the crowd now, the young instructor schooling the older, neglectful husband. Marcus finished with his shoes and looked up for the first time. "That's good," he said quietly. "Sarah always finishes what she starts?" Something in Marcus's tone made Trevor pause, but pride pushed him forward. "Maybe you should try some classes yourself. Learn what it takes to stay limber." Marcus stood slowly, his movements deliberate. At 6'2", he had 3 inches on Trevor, and 15 years of military bearing made him seem even larger. "You know what 15 years in the Marines taught me, son?" Trevor's grin widened. "Let me guess. How to follow orders." The students laughed again, but Marcus noticed a few of them shifting uncomfortably. They were starting to sense something Trevor was missing entirely. "Patience," Marcus replied. "How to wait for exactly the right moment to apply exactly the right amount of pressure." Trevor moved closer, probably planning to put his hand on Marcus's chest, maybe give him a condescending pat. That's when Marcus smiled, not the polite expression he'd worn walking in, but something else entirely. Something that made Trevor hesitate mid-step. "You're right about one thing," Marcus said, settling into a stance that looked casual but wasn't. "This is already over." Trevor threw a clumsy punch. All yoga flexibility and no combat training. Marcus simply wasn't where the fist arrived, stepping aside and using Trevor's momentum to guide him into a wall of mirrors. The crash sent spiderweb cracks across the reflective surface. The studio erupted in gasps and excited chatter. Phones appeared everywhere, documenting Trevor's humiliation from multiple angles. The confident instructor scrambled to his feet, his carefully styled hair disheveled, confusion replacing cockiness. "Lucky dodge," Trevor muttered, but uncertainty crept into his voice. "Was it?" Marcus asked, still standing in the same spot. Trevor came again, this time attempting some kind of martial arts move he'd probably seen in movies. Marcus sidestepped, caught Trevor's wrist and redirected his energy into a stack of yoga blocks. The props scattered across the hardwood floor as Trevor hit them hard. "You're telegraphing," Marcus observed. "Dropping your shoulder, shifting your weight." Basic mistakes. The room had gone silent except for the sound of recording devices. Trevor's reputation was crumbling in real time, his image as the studio's alpha male dissolving with each failed attack. "Fight me properly!" Trevor shouted, lunging again wildly. Marcus caught him mid-charge, used a simple joint lock he'd learned in basic training, and guided Trevor into the reception desk. The impact knocked over a display of essential oils and meditation crystals. Trevor was breathing hard now, sweat showing through his designer workout shirt. The easy victory he'd expected was becoming a public catastrophe. "How are you doing this?" he gasped. 15 years Marines," Marcus reminded him. "You thought that was just talk." But Trevor's pride wouldn't let him quit. Not in front of his students, not with everything being filmed. He grabbed a yoga block from the floor and swung it like a weapon. That's when Marcus stopped being gentle. He caught Trevor's wrist as he swung, applied pressure to a nerve point, and Trevor's fingers went numb instantly. The block dropped to the floor with a hollow thud. "Assault with a weapon," Marcus said quietly, "in front of witnesses. You sure about this path?" Trevor's face went pale. He tried to pull away, but Marcus's grip was immovable. "Let me go," he whispered. Marcus released him and stepped back. Trevor cradled his numb hand, fear finally overcoming arrogance. "You want to know what I really learned in the Marines?" Marcus asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "How to gather intelligence, how to identify threats, how to recognize when someone's been feeding information to the enemy." The studio fell completely silent. Even the background meditation music seemed to stop. "See, I've been watching you and Sarah for 2 months," Marcus continued. "The coffee meetings that weren't yoga sessions. The private lessons that ran 3 hours long. The way my wife started buying new clothes and putting her phone face down at dinner." Trevor looked around desperately, seeking an escape route that didn't exist. "Sarah told you about our marriage, didn't she?" Marcus pressed. "About how I work long hours, how we've grown apart. What she didn't tell you is that I've been working those hours to save money for the fertility treatments she's wanted for 5 years. The procedures our insurance won't cover." The silence stretched. Trevor's face had gone from pale to gray. "Diana doesn't know yet," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. "I wanted it to be a surprise, but I think she deserves to know the truth about both of us." He dialed Sarah's number and put it on speaker. The ringtone echoed through the studio. "Marcus?" Sarah's voice came through clearly. "Is everything okay?" "I'm just finishing class." "Actually, I'm here at the studio," Marcus replied, keeping his eyes on Trevor. "Having an interesting conversation with your instructor." A pause. "Oh, I can explain everything." "No need," Marcus interrupted. "Trevor here has been very educational. Told everyone about your dedication to yoga. How flexible you've become in your approach." Trevor was shaking his head frantically, mouthing no at the phone. "Marcus, please!" Sarah's voice was tight with panic. "Actually, I think we're done talking," Marcus said. "Both of us!" Trevor was just explaining to everyone how he's man enough to steal another man's wife. Weren't you, Trevor? He hung up and put the phone away. Trevor was backing toward the exit, his career in ruins, his confidence shattered. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked as Trevor reached the door. "I thought you wanted to show me up." Trevor stopped, hand on the handle, trapped between his destroyed reputation and his fear of making things worse. "This is over," Trevor said, barely audible. "Oh, it's over," Marcus agreed. "But not the way you planned. Those videos everyone just took? They're already uploading. By tomorrow, every yoga studio in Phoenix will know about Trevor Walsh, the instructor who got dominated by a 47-year-old man." Trevor's eyes darted to the phones, still pointed at him. "You should probably check your contract," Marcus added. "Most studios have morality clauses about instructors who sleep with married clients. Bad for the wellness brand when it becomes public knowledge." Trevor fumbled with the door, desperate to escape, but Sarah burst through just as he was leaving. Her face was flushed from running, her yoga mat forgotten in her car. "Marcus, wait," she started, then saw Trevor's condition, his disheveled appearance, the defeated look in his eyes, the scattered props around the studio. "What happened?" "Your boyfriend tried to teach me a lesson," Marcus said calmly, "about flexibility." Sarah looked between them, taking in the crowd with their phones, Trevor's humiliated state, the broken mirror reflecting fractured images. "This isn't how I wanted you to find out," she whispered. "Find out what?" Marcus asked. "That my wife was having an affair with someone who can't handle himself in a real confrontation? I figured that out weeks ago." Trevor pushed past Sarah and fled through the door, leaving her standing there in front of 20 witnesses to their relationship. "Marcus, please," Sarah said. "Let me explain." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then walked toward his shoes. "No need, Sarah. I understand perfectly." As he laced up his work shoes, he spoke to the studio owner, who had been watching from behind the reception desk. "You might want to review your instructor policies," Marcus said quietly, "and maybe invest in better insurance." Then he turned back to Sarah, who stood frozen in the middle of the studio floor, surrounded by people recording her shame. "Sarah," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "when you get home, you'll find divorce papers on the kitchen table. My lawyer has copies of the private investigator's photos from your coffee dates and the hotel receipts." Her face went white. "You hired a detective?" "Marines taught me to gather intelligence before engaging the enemy," Marcus replied. "Your boyfriend made the mistake of thinking this was about youth and charm. You made the mistake of thinking I was too distracted by work to notice what was happening in my own marriage." 6 months later, Marcus was sitting in his new loft apartment in Scottsdale, reading the morning news on his tablet, when he came across a small business article. Elite Fitness had permanently closed after viral videos damaged their reputation and caused mass client cancellations. Trevor Walsh had tried finding work at other yoga studios, but the footage of his humiliation followed him everywhere. Last Marcus had heard, he was teaching basic fitness classes at a community center in Tucson. His dreams of building a wellness empire destroyed by 30 minutes of documented failure. Sarah had moved back to California to live with her parents after the divorce was finalized. She'd fought for half their assets, but the evidence of her affair made that impossible. Arizona's no-fault divorce laws still considered adultery when dividing property. Marcus had started rock climbing again, something he'd abandoned during his marriage. The desert landscapes around Phoenix reminded him why he'd chosen Arizona after leaving the Marines. The clear skies, the sense of unlimited space, the possibility of starting over. His phone buzzed with a text from his brother in Seattle. "Saw the yoga studio videos online. Proud of you for keeping your cool." Marcus smiled and put the phone away. The videos had indeed gone viral, becoming a cautionary tale about the difference between appearing strong and actually being strong, between flexibility and backbone. That evening, he drove into the Sonoran Desert and watched the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. For the first time in years, he felt completely at peace with his choices and their consequences.